It's another beautiful evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to Man Up. My name is James Okumu. Kona ya Wanaume is on air. This is where men get together and discuss issues that affect us. You know, it is normally said men don't talk. On Man Up, we talk and address issues that affect men and also the men we are raising to be the fathers and the leaders in the coming years. We kicked off a series talking about man and his psyche, and we are picking up on that tonight as we continue to talk about, today we are looking at toxic masculinity. I'm sure it's a term you've probably heard, but what exactly is it? What does it mean? How does it manifest? And what are the dangers of it? Got two amazing gentlemen joining me in studio today to help us get into this discussion. First and foremost, I have got the founder of Papa Bear Kenya. Papa Bear Kenya seeks to encourage and equip men to be the best, most impactful fathers that they can be. Mr. Mwongera Mutiga, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Good to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Now, I was just thinking, you cannot be the founder of Papa Bear and you don't have a beard. The beard just brings everything together.
It has to be there. It has to be there. Yeah, it's the card. If you don't have a beard,
yes.
No, you know.
It's good to host you on the show.
Thank you. Thank
also,
you.
we have a change strategist, and this is in ethical behavior and change in matters leadership. My good friend Charles Ngereso is also here.
Good to be here, Pastor Jemo, and
Karibu
thank
sana.
you very much for hosting us today.
Awesome, and happy birthday.
Thank you. Today is my special day.
Yeah.
I'm turning wiser.
You're turning wiser.
Yes.
Yes. So that this tea and whatever we are drinking is not just like that. Tungekuwa na escort.
We're looking forward, possibly after this.
You know where I come from. Tunamletea chai anataka escort.
That's right.
Toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
I've had that term used. Sometimes loosely, sometimes in serious discussions. What is toxic masculinity?
Yeah. So I don't know if I completely agree with the whole term and the premise behind it.
Yes.
But you know, what I hear talked about it is that it's behaviors that men have that are harmful to either themselves or to other men or to society in general. So it's basically about behavior and the things that men do that are considered harmful or dangerous or that are not good for society or for everybody.
Okay.
That's what I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Charles?
Yeah, for me, I would say, like my brother Mugera, it is basically the negative aspects of exaggerated masculine traits. And you find some of these displayed in different ways, some in terms of strength, stamina, lack of course, emotions. You are told that men are not emotional beings, yet we are emotional beings. Of course, self-sufficiency, whereby I have to be on top of everything and making sure that, you know, I'm doing everything. And if I feel like I'm not fixing a problem, then it looks like I cease to be a man. Of course, the dominance aspect of life, whereby I have to domineer in everything that I need, that is supposed to be done. So you find that as a man, I have to be up there, on top there. If I find myself maybe lagging behind other men, I feel like I'm insufficient, you know, at the end of the day. But finally, sexual, I would say sexual sexual desires. You find that as a man, you know, I have to be on top of things in terms of relationships. I have to make sure that my relationships, if I get into a relationship, I have to show that woman or that particular person I'm relating with that I'm truly a man. So the negative aspects that tend to define the human, or rather the masculine behavior.
But I'm just wondering, some of the things we are mentioning, isn't that how we are cultured from when we are young? Isn't that what we are taught being masculine is all about?
Yeah.
You know, yes, we are emotional beings, but our emotions are not, we don't express them as much as the women do. And I think that's a natural difference between men and women. Women are more emotional, men are not. You know, and so sometimes when I'm not showing my emotion, does that equate to toxic masculinity?
I mean, I think toxicity as you know, society defines it, is when that drive or that emotion or the way that we express ourselves physically, sexually, in any other way becomes harmful to other people. So if me wanting to be dominant, wanting to play hard, to go hard and to do things in a certain way, if that becomes a place of danger for other people, then I think that's what people call toxic. I think the term toxic has been used to cover even things that would be considered normal masculinity, for lack of understanding of how men think. But I think, to me, the toxicity comes in when, you know, in your drive to be dominant, say in your relationship or in your marriage, puts you in a place where you're now putting your wife at harm, or you're trying to harm other people in the process. Some of that negative behavior stems from a lack of self-awareness as a man. So you want to push the boundaries in a dangerous way because you want to prove yourself, or want to prove a point, or you're insecure about your capacity or your abilities. And so therefore you want to lord it over other people and make them understand who you are. And that, to me, is toxic. But just the natural masculine drive to be competitive, to push hard, to engage, to want to domineer. That's human nature. That's what men do. That's how we are. That's how we are wired. So I don't think that necessarily is a bad thing. In my view.
I'm just wondering, Charles, when looking at what Charles, what Tiga has said in terms of that negative aspect, you know, which becomes a danger to others. Does that stem from being at a place where you don't understand who you are, your identity, and so you're always trying to prove to other people by either dominating them or whatever it is to show them that I'm a man?
I strongly believe that as a man, there is a desire for me to lead from the front, and that's what has always been you know, spoken of men being the leaders. I remember growing up and being a firstborn in the family, I would take charge of all the responsibilities, you know, that my parents would assign. And in one way or another, it actually taught me the aspect of, you know, leadership, whereby I have to lead from the front. I remember, Pastor Jemo, there are days, you know, even my siblings would mess up, and I would be the first one to be given the, you know, to be whipped, and you'll be whipped thoroughly, you know, as a man. And so at the end of the day, you realize that, you know, it kind of cultivated in me a certain sense of, you know, leadership drive that was necessary for me to know that I am a man. And when I look back, you know, years later, I can truly attribute some of the, you know, the leadership capacity and the involvements that have been involved in ministry as a result of the discipline then. But nevertheless, I believe, you know, going back to the question, I believe it is very important for one to know their own self as men from the onset of, you know, the upbringing, because it is through that then you are able to know that, you know, this is what I need to do as a man. This is what this is how I'm wired, you know, as a man, and so I'm wired differently from everyone else. And so the issue of now coming to a place where I have to compete for my space in the society shouldn't be there. It should actually be something that naturally just comes out. So then at the end of the day, I become the man. If, you know, we live in a society where we are told, you know, that's how boys always, you know,
boys will be
boys, you know, you know, and if I tend to show some emotions, I feel like, you know, everybody around me telling me, man, you should man up. And I'm glad that we have this man up session here. But we want just to say that out there, to every man out there, and speaking to every man out here, it is important for me to show my emotions. Showing my emotion doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a weaker vessel or I'm a weaker man in the society. But it gives me an opportunity to also express myself the best way I could.
I like that. And, you know, just to add to that, because sometimes I think we try and put all men in one box. And I don't think we can fit in one box. I've got friends who are very emotional. You know, I mean, for them showing emotion, it's almost second nature. And then there's the other side of men like me. sometimes before you see tears, lazima ziko huko kwa nini? Kwa toes.
Kwa magoti.
Kabla zijae, ndio zianze kumwagika. It takes time. And sometimes somebody may think you're so insensitive, you don't have emotions. It's just that I express them differently. You know, and so if we were all put in one box, then again it becomes an issue from my perspective. The other thing I also wanted to ask is this before we take a short break. Sometimes I find that what we call toxic masculinity ends up being celebrated in society. That's the real man. That's a man's man. You know, a man who is wild, a man who is rough. Huo ndio mwanaume. And so sometimes I wonder, are we sending conflicting messages, thinking about even the next generation of men that we are raising? On one hand, we are telling them this, but what they see being celebrated out in society is the complete opposite of what we are telling them a man ought to be. How does that play? How does that work out?
Let me get spiritual. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Praise the Lord.
Amen.
You know, if you look at people in the scriptures,
Yeah.
King David was a very emotional man.
Yes.
As in he would cry. If he was living today, people would think he's kind of a bit of a softie. Because he's those guys who would play the guitar to soothe himself, and he'd dance openly. His wife actually despised him at some point because of that. And those are behaviors which we would not traditionally associate with a man.
The man, yeah.
But this same King David was a warrior.
Both.
He was those guys of killing people. He was a serious soldier at the same time. So those two things can exist at the same time. And the difference, I think, what we struggle with in today's society is that we don't have the same kind of caliber. We're not all the same caliber as men. And there's an element of leadership. You know, like Charles was saying, leadership is something that men are inherently structured for or designed for. Not to say that women can't lead, but as men, that is our default. We're meant to have a sense of direction, a sense of purpose. We're meant to come into a situation and provide leadership. And that's something that's lacking. And when people say men are being overly emotional and leave it at that, many of the times it's because the man is just emotional and is not a warrior at the same time. He's David, he's half of King David.
He's half of King David.
He's just doing one bit of it, but not the other. And the opposite is also true, that you find a man who is all warrior, all soldier, kill, 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 but he's got no sensitive side, he's not in touch with his emotions, he's not willing to express anything. So I think there's need for balance. But ultimately, neither of those dispositions takes away from the unique position that God has given us as men. In terms of leadership, in terms of structure, in terms of purpose, in terms of direction, in terms of building. Like we as men are designed to build stuff and to create things. Like Adam was given a task to work. There's men who just sit at home and do nothing, and they expect to be treated like men. So I think men need to be balanced in how they approach things. But what we call toxic is either one or the other. You're doing one and you're not doing the other. And that's, I think, where the disconnect is.
I like that. I feel like we should take an offering now that you've gone spiritual.
Please, on the scrolling down on the... No, I'm kidding.
We are talking about toxic masculinity on Man Up tonight. As always, 1 minute, rush to the water station, get a cup of water, come back as we continue with this discussion. We are taking a short break. We'll be back soon.
Tomorrow on Youth on the Move.
My name is Elizabeth. I'm a fishmonger by profession, or that is what I do now to make money.
And an interesting youth event that you didn't know about.
The PDF festival has been really fantastic.
The overriding theme of this PDF is actually competition and collaboration in democratic development.
That's tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. on Youth on the Move.
Welcome back to Man Up. Tonight we are talking about toxic masculinity. If you have any thoughts or comments about what we are talking about, you can always send them in via SMS on 20316 or WhatsApp 0786 316 316. I'm hanging out with Mwongera Mutiga and Charles Ngereso. I was just wondering, even as we continue talking about this, where then do we find the balance? You know, you talked about King David, there's this side, there's this side. That balance has to be there in the kind of society we live in today. And also considering the fact that you know, the boys are looking at us men. How do you create a balance? How do you avoid that toxicity?
I think, Pastor James, that's a very interesting question, because at the end of the day, it is important for me to really get to know who I am and why I am doing things the way I am doing them. Because most of us end up doing things as men because we have seen, you know, the society demanding us that we should be able to do them that way.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I end up doing things for the sake of the society as opposed to doing them for my own personal sake and personal convenience. So you'll find as men, we actually end up succumbing to pressure. And when the society is talking about men, you know, taking the lead, men being involved in activities out here, and I like the way you've put it, you know, there are young men looking up to us out there. Look up to Charles, because Charles is, you know, doing things the way he knows it better, but also the way God has ordained, or rather the way God has wired him to do things, as opposed to looking up to Charles and wanting to become another Charles, yet you cannot be able to replicate yourself, you know, to become Charles. You can only be who you are. And so the question of self-identity here, to me, matters a great deal, Pastor Jemo, even as we look at, you know, this whole aspect of toxic masculinity. It is for me to understand that this is the way I am able to do things, and to be able to also believe that I also have my own weaknesses. When I understand that I know my weaknesses, then I can be able to challenge myself on how to deal with those weaknesses, so then I can be able to become you know, a great man in the society. It is taught that, you know, and you know it very well, that, you know, responsible men have five things in common. Yeah, and these ones, we went through them. You know them very well, Pastor Jemo. Yeah, you know them very well. You know, a real man must do what? Must be faithful to themselves and faithful to the society.
Yeah.
A real man must lead by, you know, lead by example, you know, leading by example. A real man should be able to take initiative.
Yeah.
And we're talking about initiative, taking initiative here. And taking initiative of what you know best you can be able to handle as a man. To me, that helps me get to understand that I am in this place, so then I can be able to offer what I can be able to offer.
Okay.
If there is anything I don't feel like I have the energy to offer, then let me not get myself into it.
I'm just wondering, because as much as we're talking about toxic masculinity, you know, there's also the other, the pendulum can also swing on the other side, where you have toxic femininity. But there's always this question of identity, and sometimes I wonder, because now we keep talking about the empowerment of the girl child, which is a good thing. There are some men who have the notion the girl child has been over-empowered. I don't agree with that. But I sometimes wonder, did this affect this? Because some of the things women are now doing, because they've been empowered, are the things men would use to derive their identity from. I was the sole breadwinner, now my wife is earning more than me. You know, I was able to do this, now my wife can do it, you know. The woman I'm trying to go out with can do A, B, C, and D. And I'm wondering, did that end up becoming a competition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a narrative that's going around in society today, through the media, through social media, through different channels, about men and about masculinity, about the role that men can, should, and do play. And to me, it's worrying, because it's painting this picture that men are either dangerous, or they're incompetent, or they have no idea what they're doing.
They're deadbeat.
They're deadbeats.
Yeah.
And words are being put to describe that.
Yeah.
So, you know, when someone says toxic masculinity, immediately certain things come to mind. It's the narrative. A man no longer sees himself as a leader in the home, right? And your leadership is restricted to how much income you make.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think as men, what we need to do is we need to get back into ourselves and become more aware of who we are and remember what God put in us, the leadership role that God has placed in us. Okay. Because if I'm on my purpose, if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, if God is directing me and I'm following his instructions, then everything else will align. That's how God designed society.
I'm just wondering if this also is another factor that you know, affects how men behave and how men think. I find that we only highlight men who are doing the wrong things. We don't take the time to celebrate, even in our churches. Yeah, even in the church I pastor, Mother's Day is bigger than Father's Day. Father's Day can pass by and no one will realize it. Mother's Day, we buy roses for every woman in the church. We celebrate the woman. You know, but I find that when we highlight the men, mostly it's the negative things, the deadbeat dad, you know, the one who did this and did this, cheated on his wife, did this. Does that also have a role in this conversation?
I think, Pastor Jemo, fathers are critical, and the masculine, you know, presence in a society is very, very, very important because it helps shape the society in a very positive way. I remember some time back a study was carried out that was in the US about 10 years ago, and it came out strongly that the families, the children whose fathers were present in their lives all through, they rose up to the ranks of great responsibility in the society. Okay. While those of the parents who were absent, most of them were languishing in jails, you know, at the end of the day. And so you realize that fathers and men have to really be celebrated in the society, because we are all emotional beings. And it's important for us to know that even for the ego of the man to really come out so strongly, it has to be appreciated in a way or another. 5 things that I would just talk about, you know, the role of a father in the society. Number 1 is fathers are supposed to be present in the society. They are supposed to make sure that they are present in the lives of their children. Fathers have also been given the responsibility of being the priests in the family, you know, sharing the responsibilities and making sure that the family is aligned with God. And it's very important. There's a very thin line between a father and God, because the father has to hear what God is saying, and it is that God is saying that is able to be reciprocated within the family. And so you realize that fathers play a very critical role within the family. Number 3, fathers are meant to be providers. And I think we overemphasize that. And we've talked about it here before. But we overemphasize that. But it is important for us to know that as men, we are called to be providers in the society. So then we can be able to provide for our children, provide for our families, and make sure that the society at large is well catered for. But finally, fathers are to speak, you know, to speak into the future of the family. They are prophets that God has ordained in the society today, that we can be able to speak forth into the society. The nation requires fathers. The nation requires men who are able to stand out, and to stand out to be able to speak on behalf of the nation. Get to hear what God is saying and reciprocate that, speak that forth into the society, and I know we will be able to achieve great goals that God has given to us, even as we take up our responsibility of manning up the society that God has given to us.
You know, as you're speaking, I'm just wondering, toxic masculinity and the God factor, is it a defiance against God?
You see, that thing of submission is so critical.
Yes.
I think it's a subtle form of defiance. Now that you've mentioned it, I think about it, it actually makes sense. That we, as a man, you want to lord it over others and lord it over the Lord also.
Yes.
But the thing about being a man is that men are under authority. That a real man is under authority.
Yeah.
Men in the Bible who did great things did it under submission to God.
Yes.
And not just to God, but to other men as well. And that's the thing, you know, I think part of the toxic masculinity element is this idea that I cannot report or answer to anybody.
Yes.
That I am my own man.
I am my own man.
And therefore, I will do whatever I want. I think that's a very toxic ideology or mentality, because we are all under authority. There's nobody who, even those guys who call themselves self-made billionaires or whatever it is, even they are under authority. There's somebody who they either report to, a board of directors, you know, clients, or whatever it is. So the notion that as a man you can do whatever you want and not answer to anyone is toxic. We have to appreciate authority in our lives and also authority of the Lord. The last person who refused to accept God's authority was Lucifer, and we saw what happened to him.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that as men we appreciate and being under authority does not make you less of a man.
No.
Just because you report to somebody, and there's a boss who's bigger than you, who earns more money than you, has done more stuff than you, doesn't make you less of a man.
Very true.
You're still on your purpose. You're still doing what you need to do. So defiance of authority is toxic in my opinion.
Okay. As we wrap up, what would your concluding remarks be on this subject to the men who are listening in tonight?
I believe as fathers and men, we have to really come to a place of knowing that we need a me time. We need time with myself. So then this time tends to define the purpose. It tends to define the reason for me being who I am. It tends to define what I have actually been created to do. And so as a man, it's important for me to understand myself well and know myself better, that will be able to help me function even greater.
Awesome. Yeah.
I completely agree with you, Charles. I don't even know if I can add. But I think having a relationship, and this is a Christian station, so we can talk about Christian masculinity.
Yeah.
I think it's the most important thing any Christian man can do is to cultivate a walk with God. It opens up you to self-awareness, opens you up to your purpose and what you're supposed to do in this life.
Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being available for this discussion. We truly appreciate. Know your purpose, self-awareness, have a relationship with God. That way, then you will kill toxic masculinity. If you decide to be the Lord over your own life, the Bible says the heart of man is exceedingly wicked. My friend, that's a shipwreck waiting to happen. But if you connect with God and allow God to show you who you are, because He is the one who created you, He's your maker. I love what these two gentlemen have said. When you get in touch with God, you will become self-aware of who you are, and you will connect with purpose, and your life will be more meaningful. That's all the time we have for Man Up tonight. Thank you so much for being a part of this discussion. Have yourselves a great evening, and God bless you.